Mike, would you say worker placement is still our favorite mechanic?
It probably is.
Probably is. So let's talk about our 10 favorite ones. What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Brothers Murph, and that's right. We're going to talk about our top 10 worker placement games. This is a game where you have some kind of worker, and you are placing out. We will say this is not going to be dice placement. There's a lot of games where you use kind of like dice as worker placement. Yeah. We've actually done a list like that in the past. You can check that out. But this is going to be specifically worker placement, which, if it's not our favorite mechanic, it's definitely probably top 2 or 3.
Yeah, there's so many great mechanisms with the games, but a lot of them will give you action spaces to go to, and you have some pool of workers that you can go to. So again, here are 10 of our personal favorite worker placement games.
Our number 10 is going to be the Friedman Freeze game Finishing Time, or Feierabend, and we have the German version, although the game is language independent, so it doesn't really matter in terms of this, but this says Finishing Time in English. Finishing Time is a game where you are trying to lower the stress in your life. I really like the theme of this game. I think it's really, really cool, and it's a fun little worker placement game as well. But this is a game where this is I guess I would describe it as a 2 steps forward, 1 step back game. And what I mean by that is this is a game where you're going to be doing all these things to try and lower down your stress, but then at some point you're essentially going to run out of time, run out of workers, things like that, and you're going to have to go back to work. When you go back to work in your factory, it's going to stress you out again. And then you have to then go on vacation again to lessen your stress. And that's what you're doing. You're doing this kind of 2 steps forward, but then you're going to have to go back, because you go back, you gain a bunch of stress back, but hopefully you lost more stress than you're gonna gain back. It's just a really cool concept, and it's kind of all about hey, don't work yourself to death, right? Like take vacations, people. Enjoy yourself. If your entire life is work, that's not much of a life, right? And this game kind of personifies that, and I really like it. But it's really ultimately kind of a light game. You have these workers, and when you're out on vacation, you do a whole bunch of different things. You can go out on a date with your spouse. You can go on vacation. The longer you stay on the vacation, the more stress that you're going to lose. All of these things then do cost money. And there's these it's got this really cool triple circle board, where the circle boards are all the different places you can place your workers, and I just think it has a really cool look. But then also, while you're at work and stuff, you can then strike to do different things. It's very pro strike, which I'm here for. You can strike for better wages. You can strike to close the wage gap, the gender wage gap. You can strike for more vacation time. You can strike for more abilities to strike. You can strike for all these different things, which essentially is going to make your life better when you then go on vacation and things like that. It's really, really cool. I like it a lot, but it's a pretty simple game, but it's pretty darn light, but it's just got, I don't know, an interesting theme. It's just different, and I just really enjoy it.
Number 9 is Targi. This is a 2-player worker placement game where you are going to be having a kind of border of cards and then a bunch of cards in the middle. So your board is just this tableau of cards, and you're going to be placing your workers on those cards that make up that border. There are going to be various actions you can do, resources you can gain, and things like that. And then what's really kind of fun is as you place out your workers, you and your opponent, anytime that you have a worker kind of on one edge and a worker on another edge, where those two, if you draw an imaginary line, where those two things would intersect, you'll put out a tribe marker. So you'll ultimately end up with upwards of 5 different workers spots put around on the outside and the middle of the board. And then you can activate all of your workers in whatever order you choose. And you're doing this to complete these tribe cards, these kind of locations. You're going to be getting, salt, dates, pepper. If you have the expansion, you have water coming in the mix and things like that. And you're going to be building out these locations, which are going to give you ongoing benefits, one-time bonuses, end-game points. There's a bit of, set collection with each row of your kind of player area. If you have all of one type of location, like an oasis, you'll get bonus points for that. And you're trying to kind of mix and manage your resources, really. So the reason we like this one so much is the tactical nature of it being a 2-player game. And if I place a worker, I cannot place, my opponent rather cannot place a worker directly opposite of mine. So there's a lot of blocking and trying to get into people's way and trying to make sure that you end up with as many of those tribe markers out as possible so you get the fullness of your turn. Really, really fun, always really tactical and sneaky, and that is Targi.
Our number 8 is going to be Barcelona. Barcelona is by Board and Dice. We really, really like Board and Dice games in general. I don't think it's gonna be the last one you're gonna see. Actually, I know it's not gonna be the last one you're gonna see. This is an interesting game and kind of an interesting take on worker placement because you don't necessarily get to choose the workers you're putting out. Let me explain. So basically you're building out Barcelona and there are 3 different kinds of citizens that are going into the new kind of buildings in Barcelona. It's gonna be like upper class, middle class, and lower class citizens. And you're gonna grab 2 citizens out of a bag and they're going to be the 2 citizens that you grab. Again, either upper, middle, or lower class. It could be 2 of the same, they could be different. And then you're basically going to stack them in a little stack of 2 and then put them at the cross section of a street. And then at the end of those streets, both up and then to the sides, you're going to have actions, and that's going to be your worker placement where you are placing out those workers. But again, they're not really like your workers and you're not necessarily choosing the workers because you're getting from the bag what you're getting from the bag. Now, in terms of like when you place those workers out, whether or not you place like a middle class person on top and a higher class person on bottom, that doesn't really matter. They don't really work. It just matters where you put them. That's going to dictate the actions you do. And so the actions might be like building out a trolley, not putting out a building, but putting out passengers, doing a whole bunch of stuff. It's a board and dice game. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. This game is also very much about comboing. A lot of things will allow you to combo, but they're all centered around building up Barcelona. And then after your kind of action selection part that you've done, you then will build buildings, and the buildings are going to be built based off of which citizens are around a certain square on the board. So if you have like a bunch of high class citizens, you will then take those citizens off of their stacks and then put down a level 3 building per se. And that's going to kind of give you bigger bonuses, but then also some drawbacks because Cerdà, who was the kind of grand architect of Barcelona, had this really great idea of like, hey, let's not have classes. Everyone's gonna live kind of the same. It's gonna be like very, very cool. And then a bunch of rich people said, oh, let's just not do that. And so, you know, classic stuff. And so if you build like high class buildings, Cerdà doesn't really like it. And you have a Cerdà track and it's gonna go down because he doesn't really like that. Certain things like that. So it's all very cool and thematic, but it's very, very pretty. It's very interesting. I like the fact that you're kind of getting what you're getting in terms of the workers, which again, mostly matters for the buildings, but then you get to place them out and you're going to get to do different actions depending on where you place them. It's really, really cool. It's gorgeous and I just really enjoy it.
All right, next up is Tzolk'in. This is a game that, to me, has the best gimmick I think that's ever been made because it's super duper functional to the game. This is a game that when you look at the board, it's just crazy. There's all these interlocking gears and you are on a turn either placing workers onto those gears or removing some amount of workers from those gears to take actions. And at the end of every turn, the gears will shift forward and all of your workers that are on gears will take a little carousel ride around the gears. And the longer they stay on the carousel, the more powerful the actions become. So it's really a game about timing. You have to take one of those actions. You either have to place one or more workers or you have to remove one or more workers. If you have no workers to place, you must remove some. So it's really about finding the timing of everything. How and when do I place my workers out? When do I get them right to where I want them to go to get the resources I need to be able to take the actions I need to be able to build your building cards, go up temple tracks and do a bunch of things like that. So this is one where I feel like when I finally sort of figured out how to play it, I am by no means good at the game, but I sort of know what I'm doing. I feel like I leveled up my gaming ability because I really had to have foresight. I had to think into the future. It's like, I'm not doing stuff for this turn, I'm doing stuff for 2 turns from now. That is super duper cool. It also looks awesome on the table to have these interlocking gears and things moving around, but the fact that it serves a vital function and to kind of, depict that timing, the time that you're investing in a certain action is just really, really neat. So I love how it reinforces the things you're doing thematically. There's ways to kind of upgrade technologies and get better rewards when you take certain actions or gain resources and stuff. There's so much to love, and it's got a great gimmick to boot, so that's Tzolk'in.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen. This used to be my favorite game. It's not my favorite game anymore. We'll talk about my favorite game later. I love Viticulture. Viticulture is still one of my favorite games. It's still in my top 10. I absolutely adore this game. This game is a game where you are building out a vineyard, and you're running your own vineyard, and you're placing out your workers in different seasons. So in the base game, it's just gonna be like spring and then fall. And then with the expansion, a lot of people play the expansion, the Tascini expansion. It's kind of one of those essential expansions where kind of like, if you're gonna buy Viticulture, just go ahead and buy the Tascini expansion. It's that good. You'll never not play with it. And I kind of agree. In that one, you have spring, summer, fall, and then also winter. But basically what you're doing is you are getting different kinds of grapes. You are then going to be picking those grapes, squishing those grapes down into juice, aging that juice into wine, and then using that wine to fulfill orders. And those orders are gonna be your main way to get points. I've always really loved Viticulture. From the moment I saw it, I was like, that's gonna be my favorite game. And up until very recently, it was. I really, really like it. I like really open games, kind of like open, you gotta do whatever you want, right? I also really, really like linear games. This game is very linear. Like I said, you get grapes, you pick the grapes, you squish the grapes, you age the grapes, you fulfill wine orders. It's very, very linear. I find this game to be very, very easy to teach. Because it's like, yeah, everything you're doing kind of makes sense. It all makes sense, kind of one big line. It's also just a nice worker placement game. You're blocking people because there are a limited amount of spaces, so there's that nice tension where you're like, oh, please don't go there, please, oh gosh, you went there, okay, fine. I guess I'll have to use my grande worker because you have a big worker, a grande worker, and that worker can go to spaces that are blocked, which is also really, really nice. So you're not completely stuck. I think the original version, because it's technically the Essential Edition, the original version didn't have grande workers, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine playing this game without grande workers, but I still absolutely love Viticulture. I just think it looks nice. It's got great vestibular art. It's just pleasing. It's got a cool theme. I think vineyards are beautiful pieces of land, even though I don't drink wine, I don't drink at all. And so, but I still just like vineyards. I think they're cool, and I love Viticulture.
Now, if you know me at all, you know that I love A Feast for Odin. It was my former #1 game and still one of my very favorites of all time. And this is like worker placement to the max because this has a giant board with like 50 worker placement spots. There's so many places that you can put your workers. And specifically, you have this pool of workers, and certain action types are going to require one or more workers to be placed at a time. And of course, if you're placing on the spots that require 2, 3, or 4 workers, those actions are going to be more powerful than the ones that only take 1 worker. So it's really about how and where do you invest your pool of workers? How do I, take on this bigger task? Of course, it takes more people from my tribe to go do this task. And so I need to make some decisions there about, what is that going to leave me with after the fact? What am I gaining? What am I left with? And how do I kind of, use my time as efficiently as possible? That's something that I think is ultimately always interesting. There's so many directions you can go in this game. It really is this kind of big sandbox, ultimately to collect tiles to put onto your board and fill out your board and go explore islands and fill out those island boards as well. But there's so many avenues I feel like to explore. I have played this a ton and feel like there's whole strategies I have not dug into yet and could still go to. And depending on what's going on in the game, I can shift over this way or shift over that way. So it's in a way wide open, but you have to still think about things. It's not like there's no thought going into your turns. You have to be really specific about your stuff because you don't want to be inefficient with your time. So it creates, all these avenues, but a lot of stuff to kind of munch on as you go. So that's why this game is always awesome, super duper fun. It's just a wealth of opportunities with all the worker placement spots. That's A Feast for Odin.
This box is yellow. This is Oranienburger Kanal, which is very yellow, but hey, I like it a lot. Oranienburger Kanal is an Uwe Rosenburg game by Spielworxx, and I don't know, this game is not gonna be for everybody. This is a worker placement game where you have kind of a set, there's like only 6 actions in the game, and it's kind of got like a back and forth worker placement thing where there's going to be like 5 discs, and those are going to be the worker placement discs. And on your turn, you're going to take the big stack of discs, put one worker down onto the thing you want to do, and then hand the discs to everyone, to the next person. It's only a 1 to 2 player game, so you'll hand it over to your opponent. So basically, if you're the first player in the round, you're going to get 3 actions, your opponent's going to get 2, and then first player is going to switch, and then they'll get 3 and you'll get 2. And the worker placement is very, very simple. This game actually, as a whole, is extremely simple. It falls kind of into the Lahav category of like, the game itself is actually like really, really simple. Like in Lahav, you can either take a bunch of resources or activate a building. The resources you just take and the buildings just tell you exactly what they do. That's kind of all the rules. Oranienburger Canal is kind of a similar thing where like the worker placement spots are like, get a bunch of wood, get some stone, get this, get that, or play a card, or do that. That's pretty much it. There's not really much else to do. And then you're getting these cards, and then these cards are gonna be different spots of the canal, the city you're building out. You're gonna put them in your little board, your little grid. You pay for them with the resource. It has another kind of Uwe resource wheel. And the cool thing about this game, what I really, really love about this game, is the cards are all about timing. Because when you pay for the cards and put them into your tableau, they don't activate. They only activate when they are completely surrounded by some kind of pathing. So a path, a road, a train track, or a canal, some kind of thing around it. It has to be completely surrounded, it'll activate. Or you can build bridges over those kind of pathways, canals, whatever. And once a card has 2 bridges connected to it, it'll activate again. Or you can do the bridges one first and then surrounding it. You can do the surrounding one second, but you can only activate each card twice. And the cards are gonna be, hey, you will then get all of this stuff. You'll get these points. Or you can turn in da-da-da-da-da to get all of these things. So all the cards are completely different. And so it's all about timing. It's all about when do you actually want to activate it? Because a lot of times when you buy it, you don't want to activate it right then because you're not really prepared for it. Because the card might be like, for every canal around this card, you're gonna get 4 points or something like that. So the thing is, right when you get that card, unless you already have a spot that has 4 canals around it, you don't want to put it there. You don't want to activate it now. You want to put it there and then eventually completely surrounded by canals and then activate it. And so there's all of this timing that happens with Oranienburger Canal. And the worker placement's a big part of it because that's how you get all of these things. But then the card play is so interesting. And I love that timing aspect. I think this game is a masterpiece. I know some people really don't like it, but we really, really like it. I love Oranienburger Canal.
Next up is Tawantinsuyu. This is a game that, similar to A Feast for Odin, has a ton of worker placement spots, although you don't have access to all of them at all the times in the game. This is a game that when we first were learning it, albeit it was digitally, it was very overwhelming. We're like, what am I looking at? There's this giant board with all these spaces and how and where do I go? And then as you get into it, it kind of starts to make a little more sense. You can kind of, build a strategy from there. So this is a game where you are kind of managing your people, and you have workers, and these kind of god cards are going to have different symbols that are going to match the symbols on the board. So if I play a card with a certain type of symbol, I can place a worker on any worker placement spot with that matching symbol. So again, I don't have access to all 80 odd spots at once. I really can only go to places that I have shown in my hand. So that's going to kind of give me a little bit of direction to go from there. The thing that we really like about this game is that, again, there's a lot of options, a lot to munch on, and that's really cool because there are worker placement spots. And when you place in, you're going to take 1 or more of the tasks that are surrounding that spot. There'll be 3 action types, and you might be able to do, you always get to do 1, you might be able to do 2 or 3 or even 4 tasks while at that spot. The color of the worker you place will also give you potentially another opportunity. It might give you the ability to take a second task or to get some other kind of bonus. So the color of worker you place is also a consideration. Where you place that worker is also a consideration. You have your little presets at the top of the hill that's moving around, and there's all these kind of action follow mechanisms up there. So how and when you move around will change the kind of areas of the board you have easy access to with your workers. So that's an important decision to make. There's just a lot of fun stuff. And this is one that very much, once we got over the initial overwhelm, really was rewarding and fun to explore. So we have come to love this. This is probably our favorite of the tea games from Board and Dice, the Tekenus and Teotihuacans and things. This is probably our favorite, just because I guess we just felt a lot of reward once we kind of cracked the code, as it were. So that is Tawantinsuyu.
I alluded to my favorite game ever earlier, and it is now the Prodigals Club. The Prodigals Club is my favorite game on the planet as of right now. Who knows? It might be Splendor next. It probably won't be. But nonetheless, I love Prodigals Club. Prodigals Club, again, is one of those games I feel like we talk about a lot on these lists. It kind of just, it checks a lot of boxes, and it's also a game that we think is like really underrated. It's my favorite game on the planet, and I feel like no one ever talks about it, so we tend to talk about it a lot. We're gonna keep on doing it, dang it. The Prodigals Club is my favorite game. It's a worker placement game where you're trying to be a very bad person, frankly. You are trying to lose all your friends, lose all your money, and lose all of your votes. You're trying to lose an election as well. And those are the three kind of scoring conditions in the game. So you'll have a separate score for each of those things. At the end of the game, whatever one of those scores is the highest, which is bad, you want a low score in each of these. You want no friends, no money, no votes. Whichever one of those three things is the highest, that is your score for the game. So if you have no votes, -10 friends, but still like $50, your score is 50 and you are going to lose. So you have to do all of these different things, and you do it through worker placement and these errand boys. You have these little top hat, very cute little pieces, these little top hats. And so the kind of worker placement part of the game, you're gonna go around and around and around, placing out your workers, and those workers are gonna allow you to do actions, they're gonna allow you to get cards, and then you're gonna basically allow you to manipulate all of these things to start moving those things down. Losing all your money stuff, you're buying a horse for a ton of money, selling it for like next to nothing. You're basically doing all these things. You're trading in a beautiful, wonderful yacht for like a little dinghy boat because again, you're trying to lose all your money. You're doing all these really silly things, and you're doing that through that worker placement. That's how you're gonna facilitate all of those things. And then once all the worker placement is done, you're gonna go turn by turn and you can activate any cards that you have, which again will be like you being rude at a restaurant. Everyone's like, oh, that man, he's so rude. I hate him now. And then your social status goes down, which again is very, very good. I love Prodigals Club. I think it's really, really good. I don't know, it's my favorite game. I think the mix of mechanisms and just the weird, ridiculous theme, it just makes me really happy. And I've always really loved it ever since I've played it. And over the years, it just kind of kept climbing and climbing and climbing up my top 10. And then now it's eventually at number 1. And it's my favorite. I like it a lot.
Wayfarers of the South Tigris is number 1 because it's my favorite game, period, of all the categories possible. So, it has worker placement in it, so it has to be our favorite worker placement game, right? It is really fun. This is a game that incorporates worker placement with workers that aren't owned by anybody. So if you place it out to take an action, it will actually go onto a physical card, and if someone were to collect that card, whether or not it be you, they will get that worker. And so there's this like closed economy of workers that will be kind of moving around throughout the game, which is really neat. Most of the time in a worker placement game, you'll have, your worker or pool of workers, and you go out and spend them. At the end of the round, you'll retrieve them, and then you kind of rinse and repeat, which is obviously totally fine and great. So this one really kind of was cool where, I might get that worker back. There might be times in the game where I have a bunch of workers. There might be times in the games where I have no workers because someone else is hoarding them, they haven't played them yet, or I don't want that card that they're on, or whatever it might be. There is this kind of ebb and flow of the worker availability. There's also dice placement that you have in this game, so it kind of does dice worker placement, kind of more standard worker placement, and kind of blends them together in a really interesting way that we haven't quite seen happen before. And that's part of why I like this game so much. There's so many avenues to explore as you are, exploring the lands, the seas, and charting the skies above. Everything kind of comes down to these tags, and you are trying to, kind of focus and build synergies and combos and kind of high value stuff by focusing on certain types of tags, whether or not be I'm gonna build a bunch of cities or I'm gonna get a bunch of vistas in play or whatever it might be. Those kind of space cards are going to dictate a lot of the direction for scoring that you'll go for. And then the worker placement will give you a lot of those kind of resources you'll need to fuel gaining cards and building out tiles in your caravan and all sorts of stuff. So this is a big old sandbox game that has, you know, again, something you've seen kind of in this list is we like to have options to explore and various directions to go. And this one feels really open and really sandboxy, and that's why we love it. So that's 10 games that we love. That worker placement in it right there.
This is many of our favorite games. Both of our favorite games are on this list. So
yeah, well, there's that.
We were kind of like this, is this list just gonna be our top 10 games of all time? Not quite. And so we were able to do
yeah, and there's so many great games that have like a hybrid of mechanisms, but worker placement is just kind of like a go-to.
Yeah.
It really, I feel like, has been the dominant mechanism in the last, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and we specifically didn't include games that were worker placement, just like a small part of it, like Arc Nova with your like association action. Technically is a little bit of worker placement, but that's not a worker placement game, you know? And so, but there are a ton of them that have either a little bit of worker placement or that's the entire thing. It's just a great mechanic, and that's our 10 favorite. Put your 10 favorite down in the comments below, and we'll see you later.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good job.
Get it out!